I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores and extend a welcome to everyone in the chambers this evening. Our first order of business is the declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of the responsibility to do so, and you can do it now or when it arises on the agenda. None declared, then we have no additions or deletions or amendments to the agenda, and the next item then is delegations. And the first one is Joyce Johnson. She's chair of our Municipal Heritage Committee, and she's here to update us on the committee's projects. Welcome, Joyce. I think you have if you have other committee members with you, by all means introduce them.
I have Audrey Underwood with me. She's my right-hand person. And our council rep is probably flying through the air. So. Mayor Smith, members of council, staff, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to be here this evening representing the Saugeen Shores Municipal Heritage Committee to present council with an update of the committee's recent activities and ongoing programs. The committee meets on a monthly basis, and members are myself and Audrey and Mark Janukovich, Gabrielle DeFrancesco, and Vice Deputy Mayor Diane Huber. We also receive valuable contributions from associate members Bill Streeter and Eric Rogers, along with a growing number of research assistants. Everybody helps with the research concerning buildings and local heritage. We benefit greatly from the resources of the Bruce County Archives and the incredible staff support we get there. The committee has attended several festivals over the past year in order to celebrate heritage and inspire awareness and activity. This has been successful, and we will continue to do this in 2016. The Municipal Heritage Committee is dedicated to preserving the heritage in Saugeen Shores. There are many buildings, barns, trees, and other natural sites that tell wonderful stories that take us back to the early days of Southampton, Port Elgin, and Saugeen Township. People lived in these homes or worked and gathered in these places. Maintaining some of these physical reminders of our history is an absolutely necessary contribution for us to give to future generations. Remembering all of these aspects of our community's growth is important to our future. 2016 operating budget request. At a regular meeting on October 16, 2015, the committee considered how best we might continue to protect, promote, and preserve heritage. Respectfully, we hope you will consider the potential to adjust our budget to enable us to enhance activities as we get closer to Canada's 105th birthday or sesquicentennial year. Our plans would help raise the profile of heritage buildings, cultural traditions, and historical residents leading into 2017. An increase in budget would let us share more promotional items and expand our programs. These will elevate the importance and awareness of heritage in Saugeen Shores. Doubling the interpretive plaque budget would give us opportunities to repair or replace some of the weathered plaques, or perhaps install more plaques. Opportunities to maintain plaque installation is an excellent means of communicating for our community's heritage. A motion to request an annual budget allocation of $7,800 for 2016 was approved, and hope that Council will support our efforts to share these stories. And the proposed budget is attached for your perusal. Heritage Registry Phase 2. There are many tools that municipalities can use to highlight their heritage buildings. An important way is to maintain a heritage registry. This is an inventory of properties, homes, structures, or construction elements that are determined to hold significant cultural heritage value or interest to communities, and thus serve as a foundation for local efforts in heritage conservation and celebration. Municipalities were given the opportunity to adopt heritage registries following 2005 changes to the Ontario Heritage Act. Heritage registries are a tool that help protect heritage resources by raising awareness of their place within our community. The Municipal Heritage Committee completed Phase 1 of the Heritage Registry in 2014 and is currently working on Phase 2. The committee held an open house at the Burgoyne Church in June to meet with the property owners and explain the registry process. Properties identified in Phase 2 are as follows. And I won't read them all, but there were the 3 range lights in Southampton, several homes in Saugeen Township, a few in Port Elgin, and also the rail trail. These property owners have received written information and in many cases have spoken with committee members personally. Each of the 18 additions to the registry has a great story to tell. One of these residents was owned by a member of Parliament. Many on the River Road were some of the earliest non-native settlers, as the river was the highway to this area. The lighthouses and railway were critical elements of transportation network in the area. The registry provides us with a collective community-wide idea of the role that heritage has played and continues to play in the development of our community. There is often confusion about what it means to be on the registry for a particular property. To be clear, property owners are not restricted in their use or enjoyment of their properties in any way. Should an owner wish to demolish a building on a local registry, the Heritage Act provides for 60 days delay in the demolition permit being issued to enable council to decide if they would like to initiate the process to designate the building. This is a very different process. Our members and research assistants spend many hours in the activities learning more about properties being considered for inclusion on the registry. Heritage designated properties. Designation under the Ontario Heritage Act is distinct and is established by council, adopting a bylaw, noting the heritage attributes of the building being designated. If alterations to these heritage attributes are proposed by the owner, the Heritage Committee would make a recommendation. Council would review all information and make a decision that may impact the property. And at this time, we have 12 designated properties within Saugeen Shores, most of them being in Southampton. There's a continuation school, the arts school, the town hall, Shady Lane Cottages, Three Sisters, the Bowden House, 2 property, Captain Spence House, Annie's Place, and the Belcher Home. In Port Elgin, we have just 2 designated properties, the library and Nodwell Park. There are so many exciting heritage features in Saugeen Shores, and they contribute to both tourism and bringing new business to the area. Entrepreneurs have purchased businesses and restored them to reflect the original architecture and vibe of the place. This adds to the prosperity, beauty, and value of our main streets and is good business. Heritage works in our town. The Municipal Heritage Committee would like to thank the Town of Saugeen Shores staff and especially you, Council, for your ongoing support of the heritage in Saugeen Shores. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Joyce. Any questions for Joyce? Councillor, I'll start here. Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Joyce, to you and your committee for doing an amazing job with. And I think you recited 3 key words, and that was protecting, promoting, and preserving our heritage. And I think the Heritage Committee over the last few years has made great inroads with those 3 key words. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about 2 things. your budget increase of $3,900. I think it's I know it's going to be a tough budget year, and I certainly hope the council will be able to see their way through this process of increasing your budget number, because I think we're looking at a couple of new interpretive signs and new programming and promotions, and I think anything we can do to preserve our heritage is a good thing. But Joyce, I'm just wondering, with the interpretive sign program, which has really gained in popularity in our community, and they're all throughout the town now, so you've done a great job, and through community services as well. Have you got any ideas in terms of what you're looking at for next year for the interpretive sign program? Maybe you picked any new spots this year?
We haven't picked any. There are many that are being suggested, and I would be amiss to say we have a favorite at this point.
Anyways, thanks again for your good work.
Thank you.
And to Audrey, and then the committee.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Joyce, for coming in tonight and for the presentation. I just had a question with regard to the list of properties you're working on for adding to the registry. Mm-hmm. And I get the 1 through 17. They make sense to me because really the purpose of the registry and the Heritage Act is to give you that 60-day hold. I mean that's the effect of it really, is to put it on that registry so a building that it has some heritage significance that may face demolition, the opportunity can be there to designate if you want to designate, or if council wishes to designate. But I don't quite get the rail trail, number 18. Could you just give me some context maybe as to why the committee is adding the rail trail, or wants to add the rail trail to the registry, and where that's going or why that's there?
We felt we would like to add the rail trail because it is definitely a big important part of our heritage. No, we don't expect it to be demolished. We just want it to be recognized. Basically, that was our main aim, was that it could be recognized, and the rail trail could say we are on the Heritage Registry. I think that's mainly our thinking for putting it on. And it's nice that it crosses all three of the previous municipalities as well.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Joyce. My question is, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but if we have 12, is that right, 12 places right now?
Yes, we do.
How does that compare to another municipality of our size? Do you have any idea?
I think, actually, we had a workshop earlier this year, and we are far behind places like Kincardine and Walkerton in that we haven't designated any buildings in the most recent years. So it is a process. It is a costly process. Yes.
Okay, no other questions or comments? Well, thanks very much, Joyce, and extend our thanks to the whole committee for the work you do.
I will, and thank you.
Thanks, Joyce. Our next delegation, is Jeff Carver. He's here at the Chamber of Commerce, and he's going to talk about a business plan for a trolley. Welcome, Jeff.
My first time. Mayor, Council, thank you very much, first off, for the opportunity to come tonight. It's with great pleasure that I get to bring this project to our council here. It's been about a year and a half or so in the works, and it's been quite an exciting endeavor. So before I start, though, I would like to give credit where credit's due. And that is to Patrick Checanita and Joanne Robbins. They are responsible for putting together this business plan that I think is very complete, very well done, a very well thought out and well written plan that I think answers any and all questions that might come. And if not, then hopefully I'll do my best to answer those as they come. We have a bit of a PowerPoint presentation, but I think we can likely breeze through fairly quickly, and those pictures look too good to change. So Without any further delay, the goal of this project is the purchase and execution of a trolley service that will run from Port Elgin to Southampton, highlighting our beautiful waterfront. The thrust of the project and the goal is to link our waterfront with our two very unique and distinct downtowns. In Saugeen Shores, we have what I've always considered something that most people don't, and that's the fact that we have two very nice, very unique, very distinct downtowns. The shortcoming has been the geography and the distance separating those, but that geography is also one of our great advantages, and that is one of the most beautiful stretches of shoreline that you'll find in this province, and that's something that I think this trolley will do a great job of highlighting to both locals and visitors to our area. The goal here is also to allow those people that come here exclusively for our beaches to enjoy, to shop and spend their money eating and shopping in our downtowns, which are the commercial centers for Saugeen Shores. The project is exciting, I guess, for a couple reasons, and probably the most exciting reason is it truly is a partnership. This project is extremely inclusive. It has brought together both BIAs, Southampton and Port Elgin BIA, Bruce County, the RTO7 group, the regional tourism group that looks after the area, as well as bringing into the fold the Bruce County Museum. The Chamber of Commerce is spearheading this by purchasing the vehicle, and these other partners will be contributing on an annual basis for the operating expenses, publicizing, advertising, marketing, that sort of thing of the trolley. But the fact that it includes all of these players in our area, I think makes this a great partnership, and one that we very much want the municipality to be part of. And that brings me to, I guess, a bit of the ask and why we're here. And that's to hopefully have you folks come budget time, which is now, commit up to 50% of the operating budget, up to the 50%, I should clarify, to a maximum of $15,000 a year. I think it's a fairly reasonable ask given the nature of the project. It's a fairly small figure when you compare it to many other expenditures that we have to make on an annual basis. We're also asking for in-kind staff time for the maintenance and cleaning of the trolley, as well as in-kind staff time for the installation and maintenance of the stops, and also the storage of the vehicle overnight and through the off-season at one of the many works yards throughout the municipality. This project has also been brought forward to the Economic Development Committee and has been endorsed by that group. So as you can see, it has already received some fairly widespread support. The concept is simple. The trolley will run from downtown Port Elgin, starting at Coulter Park, to the main beach in Port Elgin, along the Shore Road with a stop around the Miramichi Bay, another stop, and the best way I can describe it is around Jerry's Fries, with a stop in downtown Southampton at the Cenotaph and at the waterfront there, and the final stop being at the Bruce County Museum. It'll then turn around and continue back along the shore to Port Elgin. The average time for the entire route is about 30 minutes, and it will run between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. There's a suggested fare that we're looking at implementing, and that's $1 a ride. So keeping it fairly affordable and trying to generate as much interest and excitement around it as possible. The real goal, though, of this project is to provide the visitor and the locals with an experience. It's not about getting from point A to point B. It's not public transit. It's not supposed to be efficient. It's not supposed to compete with our taxi companies and that sort of thing. This is really something that I think when people come here and when they live here, that too often the great assets that we have in this community are taken for granted. We take Highway 21 to get back and forth between Port Elgin and Southampton because we're in a rush or we've got a bit of a hurry. But this, I think, will do a lot to remind people that what we have and what we day in and day out sometimes just take for the place that we live and work is something that truly is special and that sets us apart from a lot of other towns, not only in our area but throughout the province and further. So I think that this is something that it's a positive step. It's something that's pretty exciting. There's interest both here at the municipality to see something like this, and widespread interest in the community. So I hope that that the town will find it in the budget to support this, and hopefully in 2016 we'll all get a chance to ride on this trolley and see what our town looks like from the windows.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Questions for Jeff? Councillor Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jeff. I think this is a great project. I wholly support it. I think that it's gonna add a lot of excitement, and when people come through Port Elgin, Southampton, they're going to start to see this and want to stop when they're coming back. I think that one of the greatest things that we have as an asset is the people that are driving down 21 Highway and start to see the energy and excitement in our community, in Saugeen Shores. And then as they're heading off to wherever they're going, they're thinking, I'm going to stop here. Am I going to stop here next time around? And I think that things like this are exactly the kind of thing that will add a little bit more excitement in the summertime and into our downtown. I think it's a great idea, and I wholly support it.
Thank you.
Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask Jeff if he'd like to explain the color palette and whether or not we're going to be calling this the Pumpkin Express.
We'll of course be using the colors set out for us in our toolkits for marketing and promotions in Saugeen Shores, and that are specific to both Port Elgin and Southampton's branding exercises that we've so diligently worked on over the last number of years. Not a chance. Not a chance.
Councillor Greaves.
My attention span is way too short.
Councillor Greaves.
Mr. Mayor, Jeff, my question is about the stops. Sixth, though?
Yes. Yeah.
And part of what you're asking for is contributions to maintaining. What do we see a bench at each one of those, and garbage can or recycling, that kind of thing?
Yeah, one of the great ideas that we've been discussing with it is a GPS tracker as well. So folks, no matter where the trolley or shuttle or whatever we want to call it is, you can figure out where it is, how much time you have, and then get to the closest stop. So yeah, obviously some sort of seating, some sort of signage, obviously maybe a marked area for it to safely pull off the shore road, and that way, minimize any sort of headaches when it comes to traffic and that sort of thing. But I kind of want to reiterate now, what's the old saying? It's about the journey, not the destination, and this is exactly following those lines. This is about the experience that the people riding it are going to have as they ride along. Not, and I have to say again, it is in no way, shape, or form supposed to be about public transport or getting from point A to point B. That is an added benefit, and that's going to be great. It's going to really it's going to help with a lot of different things. Parking, for instance, here, it opens up a whole array of parking that isn't available now to downtowns that will be. Folks can park at the beaches or along the shore road, obviously not where there's no parking signs, but and then jump on the trolley and ride to where they want to be. So there's a whole lot of, but the stops themselves are kind of, they're there and they're identifiable, but it is very much about the ride along the shore and that kind of experience.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Congratulations, Jeff, and your enthusiasm's contagious. I like the project, and I'm just wondering, Mr. Mayor, when the report comes back to council talking about this trolley project, could we ask staff to include all of the costs? And I guess what I'm talking about is, if we're talking about signage for the 6 drop-off points, is there additional asphalt that we're going to have to put on this, place on the side of the road for the pullover areas? Like, I'm just wondering if there's any, are there additional costs? over and above the $15,000 per year, and just wondering if what those initial startup costs may look like for budget purposes. And maybe Jeff, I don't know, maybe you can answer that question. I'm not sure, but in terms of because I'm building on what Councillor Grace was talking about, at the same question about the 6 stops. Do you think the cost of those, what do you see that being, or have you gone that far?
Yeah, I don't see them being that much, to be honest. We're talking about some fairly simple signage, but I think that the real promotion for this is product development. This is developing what our resources, what our inventory of reasons why people choose to live here and visit here is. So I think that the goal of this is not so much to make a flashy stop or pave extra area or put in anything more than a simple bench or sign. This is so that social media feeds are flooded with pictures of people safely hanging out the window of the trolley and taking pictures of themselves as they go by Chantry Island in the background. So as far as investment for startup and that sort of thing, I honestly don't anticipate it being...
that's fine. And just my last, I know I'm only supposed to ask one question, but how many does it hold?
I believe the model that we're looking at is somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 to 30.
Thank you.
Councillor Dave Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Jeff, thanks a lot. And obviously, being a member of our Economic Development Advisory Committee, we've had a chance to grill you a little bit and go over this business plan. I'm really excited about it. And Mike's last question about how many it holds, I think that's going to be your biggest problem, is during the heat of the summer, when the tourists are all in town, you just see the lineup for the little train down at the beach, and there's myriad of people that are going to want to get on this thing, and it's not going to be very long before your capacity is exceeded, and you may be looking at a second model or expanding the route or something, because it's going to be really popular, and I'm super excited about it. I think it's going to be just great. I can't wait.
I think we're going to have that problem too, and I think next year it will likely, the Chamber will have to seriously consider purchasing another one of these and making sure that this is, and I'd love to see the season. We always talk about expanding into our shoulder seasons and that sort of thing. I'd love to see that become an option. I'd love to see these trolleys used by service clubs and groups in our community for special events and times like Pumpkin Fest or these sorts of things. So right now, I mean, we're really just touching the surface of what is available to us and the services and what this can provide. But I think with some progressive thought and some inclusive planning and the groups here that we've listed, I think we're going to have a lot of suggestions, a lot of uses, and a whole lot of buy-in. So do I.
No further comments. Well, thanks very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
And we will give you came at the right time because we were just starting our budget operations. So.
I had no idea.
I bet.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Is a general government staff report and has to do with the consolidated fees and charges bylaw, and our Sue Dent, our Director of Finance, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The consolidated fees and charges are regularly reviewed to ensure that they remain current and applicable. The 2016 fees and charges bylaw includes several new proposed fees related to services that are currently provided and includes increases to a number of our current fees and charges. A few have also been removed as they're no longer applicable to the town's service offerings. The report highlights the major proposed changes to our fee schedule, and I am not going to read the entire thing to you. Early adoption of the user fee bylaw is particularly pertinent to Harbor and Tourist Camp, as this allows staff to prepare invoices for next year's occupants. Invoicing earlier identifies vacancies and provides more time to work towards filling those vacancies in order to maximize revenues in the next fiscal year. Council has the option of approving the proposed user fee schedule in whole or in part at this time, and may wish to defer approval of fees proposed in some departments until they can be discussed as part of the 2016 operating budget. Any approved fees fee increases will be built into the 2016 operating budget. Then
the recommendation is that the 2016 fees and charges proposed in Schedule A be approved and that the consolidated fees and charges bylaw be presented to council for adoption. Excuse me. Questions, comments? Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Part of the Recreation Master Plan Committee, part of the stuff that they were looking at was fees for our two ice facilities, the Coliseum and the Plex. And we have a recommendation that's been put forward by staff of a 2% increase in prime time rates and freezing of non-prime time rate. Non-prime time is from when the building opens until 5 o'clock. What the committee had proposed was a freeze of the prime time rates and a $20 reduction in the non-prime time rates. When looking at the stats, our prime time rates are booked out not bad, about 83 to 85% of the time we have full usage of the facilities. However, a lot of user groups have indicated that they would book more, but the price is too high. So we wanted to try for a 1-year trial period, a freeze of the prices. The reason we wanted to reduce the non-prime time rate $20 was that we only have about a 30% usage of the facilities at this time. So the committee felt that if there was some way that we could increase the number of rentals, we could offset some of the prices. That's why the price, the gaps that we're losing money. We have people in the building and we're staffing the building, but there's nobody here. So we thought we would try a $20 reduction on the non-prime time rates. Also, one of the other things that the committee looked at was to remove the off-season rates, which is the time from the ice goes in from August until the 1st of October and from end of March until the end of April when the ice goes out. Now, this year, we have a proposal that the ice will stay at the same rate as is for the month of April to try and get some more people in. Our figure skaters go into April. We have some local hockey teams, but more importantly, our girls hockey teams that go to the provincial championships. The provincials are not until April, so they are looking for ice themselves during this time. So one of the things that I'd like to see is that we bypass the staff recommendations and look at the recommendations of the Recreation Committee, which is, again, freezing of the prime time rates, reduction of the non-prime time rates by $20, and a removal of the off-season rates. Now, I know there will be a little bit of a reduction in costs. I believe there's, $9,000, $10,000, but I believe that can be offset by increased usage, and whatever may be the difference could be covered by reserves for that 1-year trial period until the Rec Master Plan comes in and we have a further study. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions and discussion is on the water and sewer, much as it was this time last year. And in particular, this is, I think we can do better. This is a copy-paste from last year, and I'm concerned that the average monthly consumption amounts are listed at 16.7 meters cubed per month, and they haven't changed in 3 years. So the average consumption hasn't changed, and yet the statement at the beginning says we need to increase the water and sewer rates because we're not making enough revenue to pay for the product. So if we're not making enough revenue, in fact, the copy and paste is such that it says the usage has deceased, and I think that should be decreased, and it should have been decreased last year as well, but now it's definitely deceased. So my problem with it is that we are obligated to do a study this year, and it's in the capital budget for $35,000 for water and $35,000 for sewer. So there's a $70,000 study to determine just where we should be with our fees for sewer and water. And yet here we are with a copy-paste from last year that says it should go up again at 4% and 6%, and at that those numbers will push it incrementally because we're not making the revenue, because we're not using the water. And so the average is listed the same for 3 years. I'm confused by it all, actually. So I would like to, I have a motion here to defer the sewer and water fees and charges until the operating budget discussion, so that we can actually get some tangible numbers on just what is happening on our revenue side for sewer and water. We don't have those today, and then we can actually, unless I'm missing something, I don't see the numbers on the revenue side. So then we can have that good discussion, and then we're going to approve the $70,000 study that's going to tell us what we should be doing for the next 5 years with respect to the sewer and water. So can I ask, if I can get a second, can I floor a motion to defer these sewer and water charges until the operating budget? Thank you.
You can always get it if you can get a second, I think, but maybe we can address that, just some of your concerns, Neil, and I think maybe the CAO can, because I think...
For you, Mr. Mayor, the proposed increases are as was recommended by the previous study that we had done to determine water and sewer rates. So we have a document in hand that this is the last fiscal year for which it has its recommendations in place, and I think the staff report indicates it had recommended a consistent 3% increase to water. We're proposing 4% because earlier in the term of this report, Council chose not to implement the full 3%. So we're running a little bit behind based on previous rate increases. And I'd also just point out, going forward, we just lost the opportunity to get the $1 million grant for the water tower. So I'm suspecting that the 3 or 4% for water rates in future years is going to be higher with the next report that we're going to do in 2016.
Yep.
So last year we asked for a 4% water rate increase on a recommendation that it be 3%. So we went to 4 last year. And now we're asking for another 4% on a recommendation it should be 3%. And what we're saying is we're stockpiling the money because it's the only way we can afford to pay for a water tower. But there's a $70,000 study that's going to tell us what we really should be doing. So we're guessing. That's my problem.
No. That $70,000 study will be for the next 5 years. These increases were based on the last $70,000 study. So there's some justification for these 3%, the 3%, the 4% now, and I think that, if your staff are pretty clear that we're not meeting the financial requirements for the system. No. You want to say it? We got to get back to Don's too, I think, but let's get Councillor Rich.
Thanks, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I don't really know how this is all going to play out. I don't really mind 2% increases. I think that's inflation. I can understand that. There's a number of increases in there that are 50%, 70% and such. When I look at, say, for example, a minor variance, my question would be, why was our rate so out of whack last year? Why was it only 200, and why does it need to be 300? Why do we need to increase it by such a significant amount? And the same thing would hold true for, demolition permits and things that are going to cost people that are, really just trying to build or trying to make money in our community. Why we have to make those rates so significant?
Want to address that, Bart?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason some of the rates are having such an increase is that they haven't been changed since inception, especially in our planning fees. Some of the other ones in the building, we still have the same number of permits, but our overall revenue has dropped. Number of permits, but our overall revenue has dropped, and so we're trying to change the mix a little bit to kind of cover our overall costs. The building department as a whole is supposed to be never revenue neutral, and right now we're not meeting that goal.
I can see what you're saying, but I guess the question I always have is that if you're having less permits and making less profit by increasing the prices, I don't know if that's going to help you in the positive.
Thank you.
Build, right?
Actually, we don't foresee a number of permits dropping. We actually see very similar numbers to last year gross number of permits. What we're seeing is the type of permits changing.
Councillor Mike Meyer.
I just want to go back to Councillor Matheson's comment about the rental rates, and I guess I'd want to caution. I'd like to caution council on making that kind of a change with our prime ice rates and our non-prime rates when we've got rates like Breaker Swim Team, for example. I'm sure they would like a $20 per hour rate decrease. They go 6:30 to 8 in the morning. I think the Ball Diamond people, I'm sure, would like to see reduction in rates. I have some concerns about freezing a prime time rate when we are heading into. We've got a report on the agenda tonight to move forward with taking a look at some potential contractors to carry out the terms of reference for the Recreation Master Plan. And part of the Recreation Master Plan, the $50,000 we're going to be considering when we give our final budget approval in January, February, is there's a $10,000 component in there to look at our user fees. And I don't quite understand why we would want to cherry pick two rates, freeze our prime time rates from 5 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, and lower our daytime rates by $20 when we are going right into our user fee study. And I just, I think we should be very cautious with that. We've got other groups out in the community that I'm sure would like to see reductions in rates and rates frozen. But we haven't even looked at our operations budget yet. And so I'm really struggling with I think over the years we passed the tourist camp rates and the harbor rates late in the year so that we could send out $750,000 in invoices, I think, early in the new year. So we've always passed our tourist camp and harbor rates early, I believe, because we want to give staff a head start with sending invoices out. But our rates in town here, we're $144.58 for 1 hour of ice. And if you have 12 players on a team, 24 players, it's $6 for an hour of ice. I did my own research. Strathroy, we're $144. Strathroy, $183. North Perth, $169. Middlesex, $149. Lucan, $175. There are lower ones, no question. I probably cherry-picked here with rates that I thought, some comparable size. Strathroy's a little bigger. But what I'm saying, our 144 rate, these rates go from 149 to 183. So I'm not certain why we're freezing a rate, from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night. We talk about the 85% occupancy rates, but the 15% vacancy is 10 o'clock to midnight, and from 7 o'clock to 9 on a Sunday morning. And if we think by freezing rates or lowering rates by $20 going to fill those ice times, I dare say anybody's going to come in from Paisley at 8 o'clock at night because they're getting it for $30 less to come in here at 10 o'clock. So I don't get that change, because I think that we are heading into a user fee study, and I think after that, if we determine that we are $20 or $30 higher, then let's have that discussion. But I just think it's too early to cherry pick a couple rates and not talk about ball diamonds and soccer fields and the pool and other rates we have in our user fee policy. So fees and charges by law. So that's my thought on. I just think it's risky, and it's a bit of a slippery slope, and I don't think we should be picking on one or two rates.
Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if you look at the proposed schedule of rates, most of the facilities are held at a 0% increase for this year. Now, as part of the mandate of the Recreation Master Committee, or Recreation Master Plan Committee, their mandate was to look at fees and prices. And we looked at those prices, and knowing what we know with ice usage, we're losing a vast majority of our tenants of the town to other communities. We have minor hockey renting ice in Tara and Paisley and Tiverton because the rates are too low. Now, Councillor Mayette mentioned a few of the surrounding municipalities, but he failed to mention places like Kincardine and Walkerton and Hanover, which are less than our rates. So all we're asking is a one-year trial. Yes, I know there's going to be a study coming up, but we're trying to increase the usage of the time when there's somebody in here from 7 in the morning until 5 o'clock at night. The occupancy is only at 33%. We want to get more people in here. There's other ideas coming forward, but we want to try and entice more people. And the only way you're going to get more people in here is to have a slight reduction in the rates. And that was the recommendation of the Recreation Master Plan, was to try this as a one-year trial to see if we can get more people in here to raise our revenues instead of having to supplement them more than council needs to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of comments. First on what's just been discussed. Listening to these two guys talk about it is educational. Their knowledge on it is a lot greater than mine, and there's obviously a difference of opinion there. And I think, from my perspective, Mr. Mayor, what I think I'd like to see happen, we have a recommendation from our committee, and I think it behooves us to give it some consideration. I would wonder if what we should do is ask if it's possible the Department of Community Services, when the budget comes forward, to perhaps give us some estimates of the impact of the committee's recommendation should it be implemented, and then we could see clearly. We will already have the department's estimates with regard to what's recommended here, and we'll be able to compare that to what the committee's recommended, and then council can make at least an informed decision on the operating side. So that would be my suggestion with regard to that.
I think Jane's the staff person on that committee, and she probably has those numbers available now. I don't want to put you on the spot, Jane, but could you give us some idea of what the implications of those things are, the cost of those?
Yeah, certainly. I have some rough numbers that I've been doing a bit of number crunching. A $20 reduction in the prime time is what was recommended by the committee. It has an impact of about $6,500 a year. To maintain the non-prime at 0% without the 2% increase would have an impact of about just under $9,000 a year as well. One of the things that we have found through our kind of an analysis of other facilities is that with Saugeen Shores particularly, the prime time and the non-prime fees are relatively close in proximity. There isn't a big gap in between, and by freezing the 0% and increasing prime time by 2% kind of starts to make that gap a little bit wider as well, in keeping with some of the other facilities. I believe the risk in reducing the $20 for non-prime, it impacts some of our service groups, and it's awfully hard to go back to them in a year's time. We did a master plan to say, oh, we were wrong, we tried it for a year, you're going to have to jack up the budget. Instead of rocking the boat too much with user groups, and I respect what the looking at doing, there were also some members at the table that would like to investigate some other opportunities or other options of getting users into the facility. We've identified that in the fees and charges, creative ways, some new fees that maybe we could attempt to pull in during those non-prime times.
Thank you, Jane. The one thing I also have some experience on that trial period, and that was at SMART, where we reduced the rates and then found that it was a huge mistake, and we had to go back, and it's very difficult to do that. It's very difficult on the users, and it goes to almost to your credibility, saying you guys don't know what you're doing. And so I'd caution that you'd make those changes expecting that it's going to be easy to easily go back and make those changes. One comment, but I'll go to Councillor Dave Mayette at a comment there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak to the portion of the proposals that deals with animal control. The dog and cat tags increase of, if you include last year's, it's almost 23% over 2 years. I can fully understand if there's a corresponding increase in cost, but in actual fact, what we're doing is we're eliminating the annual issuance of dog tags, and we're just giving a one-time tag, and then it's going to go on your tax bill for every year thereafter until such time as you inform the town that your cat or dog has died. And we don't even let them on the beach anymore. So I can't get my head around that, and there's so many people in town who have dogs and cats, and I fear that if we keep raising the prices at 10 and 15% per year, that we're just going to drive people to the point where they're not going to bother to get a tag, and they're just going to go underground, so to speak, with their dogs and cats. And overall, we have a motion on the floor, I believe, from Councillor Menage, seconded by myself, that the water rates should be removed from this particular motion. I wonder if we shouldn't modify that motion to say that we should remove all the fees and charges other than those that are specifically required to be done at this point in time, such as those that are going to be invoiced for January, being the docks and the tourist camps. And that would give us all a chance to go through this a little bit more and get a chance to come back at a later date and in view of the operating budget, give this a more fulsome review and contemplation. Thank you.
I suspect the difficulty with that is that staff will have built their budgets, operating budget requests around these, I suspect. Would that be a fair statement? So, I mean, if we're not, it's like the cat what goes first here? I mean, I think we need to deal with these tonight, and because otherwise it makes the budget deliberations on December the 8th meaningless, or not meaningless, but they're not going to be very accurate because we don't know what the assumptions that staff used to come up with those numbers may or may not be true.
Well, that's very true. Other than the assumptions that they can use are that they're not going to go down, that the fees and charges are going to be at least what they got in 2015, with a possible minor increase. In the case of dogs and cats, 15%, but in the case of some others, there's going to be a nominal increase. And so the user fees only make up a certain portion of the overall operating budget. Of course, tax revenue makes up the overwhelming majority of that budget. So I don't see it being an impossible task for us to contemplate. And if Mr. Councillor Menage was willing to accept a friendly amendment to that motion, I think it should include all the non-necessary fees and charges at this point.
We'll go back to Councillor Matheson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, one question to our Director of Community Services. The prices that you quoted a moment ago, could you give me those again for prime time and non-prime time? What was being reduced and what wasn't being reduced?
Based on the recommendation of the Recreation Active Transportation Committee, $20 reduction in non-prime could potentially give us about a $6,500 reduction budget for revenue, and to leave it at 0% for prime is about just under $9,000.
Thank you. You reversed those when you said them the first time. You had prime time being reduced by $6,500 and non-prime time having the $20 reduction and non-prime time staying at the same. So we just want to get that clear. The Recreation Committee is proposing freezing the rates as the rates have been for most of the other community user groups, baseball, soccer, all that, until a study, as Councillor Mayette has stated, we want to keep those prices reasonable. So again, the Recreation Master Plan Committee has stated 0% increase for prime time and a 2% reduction for non-prime time. Again, there's only 33% people using it. We're paying for somebody to be in there. It's a waste of money to have it empty, so let's try and get people in there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, just to follow up on Councillor Matheson's last point, and the 30% usage, is that what you're saying for that? What about other places in the area? What is their usage for non-prime time? Do you know?
I can easily get those numbers. I have them.
That would seem to be an important fact to consider, in terms of those people are showing 50 or 60% with lower rates, then that would be something we should.
Not to belabor the point. So the loss that you're stating, Jane, is that based on usage not going up with the reduction in cost?
That's based on 2014 usage. We know that for the start of this season, have gone up which has not been the case for a number of years.
Okay, so if we lower the prices, we're assuming that we'll still get the same usage as last year. Is that kind of what you're saying?
If we lower the prices for non-prime, you won't probably get minor hockey usage. It's during school time. In the mornings, they're already here at this point. It may increase a bit.
I think that the hope of the year trial was that to see if you got an increased usage. Do you know what our operational deficit is on the arena? It's $250,000. See, here's my thing. When I look at that, I see that as every taxpayer in this community is paying that deficit, and what we need to do is make it not so that certain user groups within our community can use our facilities, but that the people that are actually paying the deficit and that paid to build this place are coming in and using more of it. That's what I'd like to see with any of these numbers, especially in recreation, because that's something that makes this community a livable place, and everyone has paid for it and are continuing to pay for it. And the more we increase the prices, the more we reduce the amount of people that are able to use our facilities. And to me, that's not why we built them.
Well, Sir Mike Wyatt.
Along with this, Mr. Mayor, but we've got an hour of ice during the daytime, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, 2 teams, 25 guys using the ice, $100, $4 per player for 1 hour of ice. $4 per player. We were just told that we're the second highest household income in the province of Ontario. We're just told that our assessment's too low. We're paying $4 per player for an hour of ice to use at the Plex and the Coliseum. Pretty nice facilities, and we're talking about, like our director is saying, freeze the rate for the daytime use, freeze the rate at $95 an hour, whatever it is, freeze the rate. She's also recommending, I think, in her proposal that the rates in August, September be the same as the prime time rate, which I support. I just think that we're about to spend $10,000 on a user fee report, and we're cherry picking a couple fees out of here, and trying to freeze and lower rates. I don't get that. I don't support it. I support staff's recommendation with this one. I don't understand. We talk about one of the comments. Well, modern hockey's booking ice time out of town. Well, because our rates are too high. But the 85% vacancy rates, the 15% of the time that's available, it's from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. Minor hockey can't use that time during those vacancy rates. They can't use 10 o'clock till midnight. Minor hockey's not going to use 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock at night. And 7 to 9 at the Coliseum on a Sunday morning, I don't know whether we've ever been able to book that. And if we charge $60, $70, $80 versus $140, are we going to book it? But in the meantime, we want to freeze rates for prime times right across the board for everybody. I don't understand that. I mean, our subsidy to minor hockey, which is something I absolutely do support, this year is $47,000, and they receive a 20-30% subsidy already. I think it's a good subsidy, and if we need to change that from 25%, 35% based on a user fee study, which we're about to do, to spend $10,000 on, but let's get the results of the study to see what we should and shouldn't be doing rather than cherry pick a couple rates. So I stand by that. I don't support the recommendation from the Active Transportation Committee, and I do support staff with their recommendation.
Okay, I think we've had some pretty thorough discussion around this issue, and I think we have one amendment here, and I think really we've had some discussion around the communities, the ice rates, and I think to be fair to everyone, I think we should have that probably in a written motion so we understand what you're recommending. So I'll give you some time if you want to write a motion there, Don, and if you can get a seconder, because we've had in the meantime, I guess then I will deal with this one amendment that we have. Yeah, well, this one may have, Jesus, this one may have some implications depending on how this motion is written, right? Okay, yeah, sorry, this is a motion to defer. Councilor Rich.
So how long are we deferring it for? What's the?
We've got it's in here. It says December the 8th. I'll read it to you. That it's been moved to defer the water and sewer and all non-compulsory, in brackets, required for immediate invoicing, fees and charges until the operating budget discussion is held on December the 8th. Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's the problem with the motion that I see is I don't know which fees are non-essential, or all of these, if we raise them, would begin invoicing immediately, I would assume. So I don't know what the motion means exactly. I don't know which of these are necessary for immediate invoicing and which are not. And so I haven't gotten into them because I've been listening with rapt attention to the other conversation. But there's a number of increases in here that I don't support, and so I guess I don't know what I'm supporting if I support that motion. Maybe maybe there's some clarity possible, or anyway.
Thank you. I think the clarification is that tourist camp harbor fees, those were ones that motion's not objecting to, and staff wanted to make sure those billings went out at the first of the year. So everything but those.
One other motion that will be coming by the Recreation Active Transportation Committee that was missed because of the longevity of our last meeting is that we'll be also looking at a 24-hour rule for the facilities, whereby if the ice is not booked within 24 hours, it is reduced half price. That's one of the recommendations, ideas. Just another way to try and increase usage of the facilities. The place is being staffed by people. The ice is sitting empty, and we're looking at some other ways of getting in. So the Recreation Committee will be bringing that forward at a later date. Because then you wait. If you wait, then it doesn't work that way. It's for the ice time that's not being used. Because you may not get it.
Oh. So what is added to this is, so I guess we're ready for these motions, and I guess the motion to defer will be the first, correct? So if this passes, then that's redundant. Well, that, until we won't deal with your amendment if this first motion to defer. Okay? Does everybody understand what we're doing here? Yeah, I'll read it. I'm just going to make sure what's... So the motion is, it's moved by Councillor Minaj, second by Councillor Myatt, to defer water and sewer and all non-compulsory, parentheses, required for immediate invoicing, fees, and charges until the operating budget discussion is held on December the 8th. Below that, there's an asterisk which says fees proposed for harbor and tourist camp will go ahead for immediate invoicing. Questions to this? Councillor Grace.
So if I had a question about the tourist camp increase, I could raise it now? Is that appropriate, or?
Yep.
Okay. So I know that the recommendation is to increase the tourist camp fee to 2%, by 2%. Considering that, what was our profit last year? Over $600,000, I think, for the tourist camp. Yes, I would like to see more improvement. If we're going to raise fees in the tourist camp, I'd like to see more projects to improve there, because that's a big profit, and it's every year we get, you know, 500,000, 600,000, and I think that we need to spend more money on updating and improving our tourist camps.
Okay. So we'll go back to this motion then. And if there's no other questions, then I'm going to ask the question. All in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Opposed? So that means that this motion really has been deferred. Yes.
Because we're looking at we want to defer the costing of water and sewer, that everything else?
Is all other, the only rates that we've approved tonight are for the tourist camp and the harbor. All other, that's what that motion said. Every other fee has been deferred. Yes.
Just for clarification, it's deferred until discussion on December the 8th.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next item is a staff report. It has to do with the Memorandum of Understanding Transition of Business Enterprise Center. And our CAO will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In August, Council authorized staff to discuss with the County of Bruce and the Province of Ontario the potential transition of the Saugeen Shores Business Enterprise Center to the upper tier as of the end of the current provincial fiscal year. Subsequently, there were a number of discussions with county staff with regard to this matter. County Council recently considered a report from its staff recommending proceeding with this initiative. Based on the preliminary approvals from both entities, the attached MOU was devised by staff setting out details of how the transition would be effected. As noted in the document, transition would occur April 1st, 2016, with the facility, financial, human resources, service delivery, and other issues to be addressed as outlined in the proposed document. Staff are seeking approval of the document from Council at this time in order to begin the final steps necessary for the transition to occur as seamlessly as possible.
And I read the recommendation here. It's recommended that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute the attached Memorandum of Understanding with the County of Bruce outlining the details for the transition of the responsibility for the programs and operations of the Saugeen Shores Business Enterprise Center to the County of Bruce effective April the 1st, 2016. Councillor Dave Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, having read the memorandum, just a bit of clarification to make sure that it's fully understood. There is still going to be a business enterprise presence at its current location but in Saugeen Shores for the foreseeable future. The staff that are currently employed there will have the opportunity to apply for their jobs. There's no automatic grandfathering being contemplated there, or automatic transfer of those positions?
Mr. Mayor, what we're transferring to the county is the agreement to provide services. So each operating entity has the discretion to determine how those services will be delivered. So we are not transferring jobs in their existing state. The county wishes the opportunity to make sure that the job descriptions fit within their department process properly. And we are two separate employers. So they will go through a process that is consistent with their policies and their bylaws. But in the specific section that deals with human resources, it's very clear saying they need continuity, and from our perspective and based on our verbal discussion, you can't do that unless you have some staff that also transition.
But there's no explicit guarantees that those people will maintain their employment?
There's no guarantee any employee of this municipality will maintain their employment.
No, but quite often when there's a transfer of ownership of a business, part of that transfer includes employment guarantees.
In a union setting, not in a non-union setting.
Okay. And the third question was around the financial impact. I understand we're going to be seeing a $38,000 reduction in the burden for the town, and presumably the county is going to pick up a corresponding increase of somewhere in that neighborhood of cost to operate this. Are we going to see the upload of that in any way, or is this just a $38,000 windfall for us?
Our net operating expenditures, when they're annualized, will be reduced by $38,000. We have the first quarter of 2016 to operate as existing, and it is hoped that the savings will be redeployed to provide related services more directly in 2016 as part of the org review process.
Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the CAO may have been just a little bit too circumspect in his last comment there about how we can redeploy these funds, and I think that is the critical point. That what this allows us to do, what it will allow us to do, is for the municipality to do what it has been recommended to us to do on a few occasions, and that is to take on a stronger, more active role in the field of economic development internally to this office here at Tomlinson Drive, to do more economic development activity and to work that into the overall actions of our senior administration and our administration in general to create an opportunity where we can have an economic development focused person here inside this facility that can spearhead that, because right at the moment we have a lot of people doing a lot of work, but nobody's got that specific task in economic development. And in my own personal view, that's a primary role of a municipality. So it's there's some things obviously some things to work through, and I think it's a good memorandum of agreement as it is, and there's obviously some pieces to fall in place. But I think this is the right action in general for the municipality to be taking, and I think we should see it through and make sure it happens. And the great thing about it is we don't lose the Business Enterprise Center to the county. And let's remember, up till this point and all along, the Business Enterprise Center has really been a County of Bruce organization to begin with. It has been operating across the county all along, and Saugeen Shores has been bearing, I think, a disproportionate amount of the burden for that service compared to all of our fellow municipalities across Bruce County, who should be contributing equally, in my view, to that, because it's a county-wide service, and it should be a county-wide service. And I think the province will prefer it to be a county-wide service. So I think this all plays together to the positive. It allows us to do more of the kind of economic development work that we ought to be doing, and it allows the Business Enterprise Center to fill the role it ought to fill, which is a regional advisory body to help foster and get small business started in all of our communities across Bruce County. So I'll support the recommendation, and I think I just congratulate the CAO and the employees of the Business Enterprise Center for building this Business Enterprise Center into an organization that we can do this with, and for executing this with an eye to what we need to be doing in the future. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Grace.
To the CAO, does the $38,000, does that include the $8,500 annual lease and the, I guess it would be a one-time payment for the depreciated office supplies and machinery and stuff like that?
If I recall the operating budget correctly, the lease cost is currently built in, so it will be additional revenue to the community. However, and obviously the one-time valuation for whatever assets are transferred is a one-time opportunity for us.
No further discussion then. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next item on the agenda is a staff report, and it has to do with an encroachment policy, and I believe our clerk, Linda White, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As per the direction from the Committee of Whole, staff has reviewed the current encroachment policy and have prepared the attached draft policy for committee's consideration. It is a general policy of the town of Saugeen Shores that municipal lands are for municipal purposes and or for the public's use and are to remain free and clear of private encroachments. The existing policy was written in response to concerns raised with respect to encroachments that were identified during site-specific planning applications. In general, the policy states that building permits will not be issued for any building or structure that is located partially or wholly on a municipal road allowance. Over the years, enforcing this policy has resulted in either the buildings or being relocated off the town's property, or the land being sold to the encroaching party, or other situations an encroachment agreement was authorized. The point to be made is that building encroachments need to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis to determine the most appropriate action. The draft policy provides all three options: remove the building from the municipal property, enter into an encroachment agreement, or sell the land in which the encroachment is located. The draft policy incorporates the existing policy statement that allows the municipality to recommend that encroachments be addressed to the town's satisfaction as part of the condition of approval for a planning application. The draft policy implements a similar policy statement as is included in the existing policy that requires the removal and decommissioning of private wells or septic systems located on municipal property. With respect to the official plan, all policies established by the town shall be consistent with the town's official plan. And there are two official plan policies that have been included in this draft for your review, and they read: private property encroachments on public waterfront access points, municipal parkland, trails, and natural environment areas will not be permitted. Where existing encroachments exist, the town may enter into a lease agreement or recognize the use of these lands. And the second OP policy statement is: where historic buildings or structure encroachments exist, the town may only consider the sale of the road allowance or public lands in accordance with the policies set out in the official plan, and where relocation of the building or structure is not practical or feasible. The additional policy statements include: over the years, the municipal staff have fielded a number of inquiries regarding encroachments and have established a standard practice that has worked fairly well in responding to encroachment issues. Staff have adopted the practice to deny requests for encroachments unless absolutely necessary. If the encroachment is on the road allowance and is considered minor in nature, such as landscaping on the boulevard, the Public Works will review the request and approve if appropriate. If the encroaching party does not accept staff's decision, the individual has the right to make the request to council. In the past, council has reviewed each request on a case-by-case basis and has approved some requests and denied others based on their merits. The draft policy includes a number of policy statements that document the town's current practice, which are available for your review. The policy also establishes an implementation and application process. So in summary, the attached draft encroachment policy documents the existing policies and practices of the town of Saugeen Shores with respect to encroachments on municipal property, and the fees to process the encroachment agreement are set out in the fees and charges bylaw.
Thank you, Linda. Then the recommendation is that council adopt the attached encroachment policy. Councillor Minaj.
I was hoping for something else. I was hoping for something firm and fair with just a statement on the existing policy. To capture the words of our Deputy Mayor, we don't need pages and pages of new description on what you can't do. What we wanted to do was create a a simple policy, which is there at the end, was an application that says, can I encroach? And these are the reasons I wanted to do this. And a reasonable fee, such as $50 or something. I find, I was looking for firm and fair. I find this tough and intimidating. And I find it's going in the wrong way. And I think that I'll vote against it. And I'll be asking for something like I suggested. Just bring us the simple statement that says, can I encroach? And here's my money to ask that question. And here's the reasonable approach as to why I wanted to encroach. And surely to goodness some preamble talk before they even put the $50 up would have been sufficient. Thank you.
Steve Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And first I'd like to say I congratulate the clerk for the hard work that's gone into this. Obviously a lot of review of other policies and listening to what we had to say. That there are just a couple of issues that I would like to bring up with regards to the policy itself. In one paragraph under road allowances, it gives several examples of what a person may be able to apply for in the way of an encroachment. It talks about driveways, curbways, irrigation systems, fencing stakes, delineation markers, large bouldings, builders, sod, running river streams may be placed with consent. And in the 2 paragraphs below it says no fences shall be erected. So you have one saying that you can ask for a fence on a road allowance, and then below it says but no fences will be allowed. So it's kind of redundant. So I would like to see the no fences shall be erected, and that cases be decided upon their merit. And I, in conversation, I do understand that we're not talking, I wouldn't be, and I don't believe any fences that would be enclosing fences, like somebody extending their backyard and putting a boundary fence on a road allowance is not necessarily what's being, what would be something that would be considered, because that obviously would not be considered. And further on, I would like to have seen a place where we talk about historical encroachments, and I presume when we're talking about historical, we're talking about things that existed prior to amalgamation, because that's really the history of our township here as Saugeen Shores, and we all can come up with examples of where we know about encroachments that existed as Saugeen Township or as former Southampton or Port Elgin, and you know, just the gardens and the stairways and the pathways and things that have been there long before this council or members of this council probably had a chance to object to them, or even the staff that are here now. So I would like to have seen the policy go to a point where we could sort of catalog the encroachments that exist, because this is where it sort of brought this on, is you've got in some instances, a neighbor that has a encroachment that is plain as day. In the case of along the Miramichi shore, where people have these stairwells down out of the back of their house, and then the next neighbor says, well, I'd like to have a stairway, something like that, and they say, well, that's not allowed, there's an encroachment. And so that, you know, I'd like to see where it captured and cataloged the historical significance of these, or how some of them are allowed and some of them aren't. So in as much as I think it's gone a long way to address the concerns that I raised, because this was a motion that I raised, I think it may need a little bit of tweaking in those 2 specific areas. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with respect to the fencing, it says that with respect to on the road allowance, there are certain things that they can ask the Director of Public Works for. The policy mentions fencing. We can certainly take it out in that paragraph, because the remainder of the policy says that no fencing shall be allowed, and there is very good reasons to not allow fencing on municipal property. If it is an enclosed area, then if it's not a road allowance, it's municipal land, then people have a claim to it over a period of time. So through court law, case law, fencing is not to be on municipal property. So the Director of Public Works, if he was to read this paragraph, the further part of it is that he shall read through the paragraph, the rest of the policy, and find out fencing is not allowed. So I certainly don't recommend a change to say that fencing could be allowed. The second part of that is having a look at the policy. Is there a need for it? Is there a justification for the encroachment? And certainly if there's not a justification for any type of encroachment, that certainly would weigh on the minds of both the staff, of all the staff, and then it would come to councils for their consideration.
Just one, and I understand the case law you're talking about, where a person, if they put a fence around an area over a period of 20 years, they can claim that that land is now part of their property. And I think that that is true in the case where there is no documented agreement between the town and that property owner. If you've got a piece of paper that says you're allowed to encroach on a certain piece of ground, that's going to come into play if it ever got to court 20 years or 40 years or 100 years later to say, no, that's not your land because it's only under agreement. But if there's no agreement, and that goes back to what I talked about cataloging, where people have got these historical agreements that might have been there for 20, 60, 100 years, if we don't know about them, then we are in a position of liability where a person could say, that pathway has been there since my great-grandfather built this cottage, and that now is my property, right? So, and I'm sure there are instances of fences, not just pathways, that people have on these things. So I think that's the important part of documenting each and every one of these to the best of our knowledge. I'm not saying go on a witch hunt, but I'm saying, and the draft policy, or the policy that was adopted by the town of Wasaga Beach, gave kind of an amnesty period for people to come forward, and if you didn't come forward, then you were at risk of losing a historical. So if you knew your fence or your hedge or your garden shed was on town property, you had a period of time to come in and make an application, and they would say, okay, based on the historic, so that we're going to allow that to continue, and here's the documented and cataloged instance of that. But if there's no cataloged and documented, then we do stand the risk of losing that land at some point.
I think that, Dave, from my perspective, I think that's the very argument why you would not want encroachments, because even that you have an agreement, it implies something, and I can guarantee you, I mean, if you're, it'll be interpreted in the court, and you'll be there, and so you're potentially putting a cloud on that piece of property and where you're far better off to say just simply no, in my mind, because I can guarantee you will hire some legal professional that would make an awful argument to say, look, 20 years ago you guys said this, and this is how I interpreted it, and so you're in that argument, and that's how, it puts everybody at a kind of almost adversarial position, because my opinion about encroachments. I think that the less you have, the far better off you are, because they are potential headaches for the future and potential loss of municipal property.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councilor Minaj, accurately depicted my outlook on this. I think is, and that simpler is better, less is more with regard to these things, which is why I support and continue to support the existing approach before this to the way we do this, which is that encroachments either are discovered or somebody comes in and asks our administration for an encroachment. They consider whether they believe it's appropriate or not on the basis of their expertise with regard to how they run their departments, and then they all of them come to council, and council gets to decide whether or not it's an appropriate use of public lands. And as I said before, I really believe at the base of it that council has the ultimate responsibility for the disposition and use of these lands. It's probably one of the one or two or three core things that we are obligated to do on behalf of the municipality. That's why we're sitting here on behalf of the people, because it's their land. And so I like the simplicity of that, and I think it works. The reason why we have this more complicated policy before us is because it's really what council asked for, some more clarity about how that process is going to work, some more clarity on the details of how this is going to play out. I don't think it's a bad policy. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's more complicated. It's more words. It's more confusing because it's bigger. But that's I think what, I know we asked to be more confusing, but we certainly asked for something that's more detailed, a more detailed approach, and that's what we have. And I can support what's in here. There's nothing in here I don't support. I guess the only thing I would ask Linda to just clarify and make a point to me on is that basic question for me, because I don't really see it in the policy, although I suspect it's the intent, is that these encroachments, if it goes through this process and staff is comfortable that or wishes to recommend it to council, or wishes to recommend that they will all come to council, that in the end staff isn't approving these encroachments on its own as a result of this policy. All these encroachments come to council and ultimately result in a decision by this council. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's good enough for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Housekeeping, Linda,
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. The $500 fee, Linda, it says a deposit. Is that $500 fee refundable, or is that a $500 fee that is sticks?
If we proceed with the encroachment, then the agreement gets registered on title, so it's $500. That the legal fees will be above and beyond that, so we'll invoice them for the extra.
And then the second question, Mr. Mayor, through you to Linda. Just wondering, like it says in the form, it says 2005, Linda. Back when it was first presented, I guess, November 2005. Is that correct? Back, I think we're June 2005, I should say. Is that when the first encroachment policy was actually approved by the municipality?
Yes.
In June 2005. And so when I see draft, I haven't looked back at the 2005 policy and the changes today. Are there Councilor Minaj mentioned that there weren't a lot of changes. Are there significant changes then from 2005 to now? I should have compared, but I didn't.
The 2005 was very limited to what it spoke to, and talked about when we get a planning application in, here's what our comments are going to be.
Okay, so it really has been expanded.
It has been expanded to reflect what our current practice is.
I got you. Thank you.
Councilor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when I originally thought about this, I thought about those stairs down from property on municipal property, and an encroachment was asking for permission to build some steps. Never did I think that we were going to turn that request into that they now own the land that the steps are on. So how did we get there? How did we get to that kind of an encroachment is superficial, some steps on top of some land, a tree that's planted on municipal property that might provide some shade in the future for a property. Those are encroachments that I thought we were talking about, not land ownership encroachments. I understand all of those answers and reasons why we would want to pursue that. When we had this discussion, it was because a person went overboard and dug up all the land and planted their own bushes and planted their stairs, and we were upset with that. And so we went through this process trying to find a way that they could have requested that up front, and not that they own the land. Did I miss that completely?
I think to be honest, I'm a little confused. I think there's two different things. What you talked about, that particular one, and I don't want to deal with it. There is an encroachment, and there was another issue that there was some trees improperly cut. I don't think the two issues may have been tied together. I don't know, but they are two separate issues. The encroachment issues here is what we're dealing with. Go ahead, Linda.
I think just for... Okay, sorry.
I think this second situation that you may have forgotten is the deputation that came to council. The information that was provided, they had the example from the Wasaga Beach policy, the encroachment policy, and then committee had asked for the entire encroachment policy to be reviewed. So there are different scenarios, yes.
Councillor Dave Maya.
I think, and for my own sake and for the sake of maybe others, for clarity, and for Councillor Minaj, perhaps, if you don't have an agreement and somebody encroaches, over a period of time, and I don't know if the term squatter's right applies, but over a period of time, there comes a point where they can make a case to the ownership of that land. So this policy actually, and whether it holds water in court or not, the mayor and I may like to discuss that sometime, but this policy actually protects the town as far as I'm concerned. Is if somebody says, I want to build a staircase, or I want to put a hedge in, or I want to put a garden or a rock or whatever it is on municipal property, and we grant them permission with a written policy saying you can put this on property, and something in that agreement is going to say, but in no way, shape, or form will you ever, by means of putting that piece of whatever it is on the property, will become an ownership of that. At least there's a piece of paper to say that we acknowledge they were doing it, and you're never going to own it. But if you don't do anything and they put something on there, but going back to that fence, I'd have to say that we've specifically put a one line in this to say no fences shall be erected on municipal road allowances, even though it's contemplated in the former. I don't think we should pick out one particular type of structure. We could say no sheds will be allowed on road allowances, or no perennial gardens will be allowed. But we've picked out one structure. We should leave it in the contemplate. I could see an instance where somebody wanted to put up a snow fence to protect their the wind drifts on municipal property, and they may get a permit for that. Or somebody may have a property which is adjacent to a municipal infrastructure piece, a pumping station or a sewage station or a landfill or something like that, where they wanted to protect the view of their property and not have to look at something that is industrial or commercial in nature. And so to specifically exclude them under no circumstances whatsoever, I think it, as the Deputy Mayor pointed out earlier, every one of these decisions is going to come before this body of 9 of us here, and we're going to get a chance to review them on their merits. And I just think to specifically disallow one particular type of encroachment is a little too specific and hits a little close to home for me. Thank you.
I guess I don't know. I don't know to deal with it. The recommendations there, and I mean, if you want to make some changes, again, specifically, Dave, I think perhaps you probably should write it down so we know what we're voting on in a motion, so I understand, because Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, does the clerk believe that the change contemplated is going to manifestly affect the usefulness of the policy? I mean, is it a major revision we're talking about here?
I don't believe so, because we're going to deal with each one on a case-by-case basis. So if the staff don't approve it, then it's going to come to council.
Mr. Mayor, I just suggest we could remove it by consent. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if...
All right, then. Never mind, Dave. I'll ask the question, is there consent that we remove that particular issue? Yes? Yes, yes. Put your hands up. All right. Back to the main motion then. The recommendation. All in favor? Want to take a 5-minute break? Yeah. Start it again. The next item on the agenda is the Community Services, Parks and Recreation staff report, and it has to do with the Recreation Master Plan, and our Director, Jane, will present.
Thank you. The Recreation and Active Transportation Advisory Committee has recently completed draft terms of reference for a Recreation Master Plan. The notion of the plan was presented as part of the 2016 capital budget deliberations on November the 3rd and identifies from the Council priority exercise for the inclusion of a fees and charges review. Although not currently approved, the committee would prefer to be in a position to advertise before consulting companies are inundated from municipalities seeking similar service. It is anticipated that the closing date will coincide with our municipal budget adoption date of February the 8th. Advertising for interested consultants now does not commit this council to a pre-budget request, as staff will ensure that a disclaimer is accompanied with the request for proposal that provides an opportunity for the municipality to not award the RFP if the budget is not approved, and have identified the number of items as far as the following for the scope that was identified as part of the committee. The financial impact is $50,000 proposed in the 2016 budget from the tax levy.
Thank you, Jane. Then the recommendation that Council authorize staff to commence a request for proposal process for interested consultants for a recreation master plan to be selected in 2016. Questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Next item is, again, it's a staff report, and it has to do with affiliate groups, and Jane will present.
The Department of Community Services regularly is asked for a reduction in rental rates from community groups to utilize municipal facilities. Previously, a list was developed to outline which groups were identified. However, it was difficult to use this as a guideline as groups and organizations periodically disbanded or new groups were formed. The attached policy really updates that existing guideline and identifies the criteria for groups that were considered affiliate groups. The reduction in fees assists these groups in their annual operations as well as fundraising opportunities by providing them a discount in the costs of municipal facilities. Included in the list of facilities are primarily halls and pavilions, and it does not include ice rental or pool rentals. It is anticipated that this policy will provide staff clear direction in determining which groups are eligible for reduction in rental fees.
Recommendation is that Council approve a policy that outlines affiliate groups that are eligible for a reduction in facility rental rates. Councillor Minaj.
Just point of clarification then, Mr. Mayor, through you to Jane, please. And if a group asks for, this policy is going to say you can't get a reduction on ice rental, but if a group wants to front the ice time, and I want to give them the funds to, does the group have some sort of third-party liability insurance, or does the person giving the money have to have it?
The person giving the money, and that really is, I would say, falls under our sponsorship program. You're asking if a group can purchase ice for another group? It falls under the group booking the ice as insurance.
Councillor Dave Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Presumably, as you said, groups come on and fall off. How does a group get onto this list?
Really isn't a list, and that's what we're trying to get away from. So the policy itself outlines groups that we will consider to be affiliate groups. What we had before was really a guideline, and it was this long list of groups, but as I indicated, some groups are no longer there. We want to be able for the groups to come to us and say, we're such and such a group. Do we fall under the affiliate policy? Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to be clear on this, then, if say a 50% reduction is approved in the fees and charges bylaw in association to this policy, then if this policy is approved, then staff would have the automatic authorization from council to make that reduction if by their determination the applicant fell into one of these categories. Is that how it works?
Correct. What I'm trying to clean up is on our fees and charges. For a number of years, we had affiliate rates as well, and they weren't in unison, and they weren't necessarily depicting a 30% reduction. They were all over the place. So this really just cleans up that entire fees and charges component of affiliate rates.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, then the just thing that what kind of confuses me a bit about the policy, and it may just be a word that's confusing me, but the first line under policy is this policy is to provide consistent criteria and process, and it provides good criteria, but it doesn't really lay out the process, or does it? That's maybe I'm not understanding, I guess, but it confuses me a bit because I'm looking for the process bit, and I assume the intention is to give these groups some clarity as to how they'll be dealt with, and council some idea of how this will work. And I guess maybe you could just clarify that for me.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to get it too onerous for groups. These are volunteers that we're dealing with. So we want to keep it as simplified as possible. Really, the procedures that they come in, they have a conversation with us and they show us proof that the group that they're representing. We've had no issues with it before. The only issue we've had is with a group coming forward and say, I'm not on your list. Well, that's because our list is open. So really, it isn't a change in how we're doing business right now. It's just cleaning up.
So really, this is the process that we're looking at, which is great because it's simple, and that's I mean, I think that's the very best it could be if this is the whole process. So it certainly has my support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Myatt.
Good, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jane. So does this have any impact on the waiving of fee policy that we have right now? Is it connected in any way?
No,
None, right?
it is not. It's
totally separate.
A separate policy.
No further questions, and all in favor of the recommendation? Opposed, nay. That's carried. So the next item on the agenda is Protective Services Staff Report and its purchase of self-contained breathing apparatus, and our Chief Bill Eagleson will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCBA, are an integral part of the firefighters' personal safety equipment. The SCBA currently in use at both fire stations, built to the 1999 NFPA standard, and purchased in 2001 following amalgamation of the three former fire departments. The equipment's well maintained, but utilizes some older technology, low pressure, and metal bottles. We'd like to upgrade. It was part of the 2015 budget. It was approved at a project cost of $230,000. That, however, now is not sufficient to fund the project with new or additional methods of purchasing. We evaluated a lot of different styles over the past year with the committee, and the committee's unanimous choice was a dragger pack. We've been able to source some refurbished demonstrator equipment that meets our needs, and will come with all new components other than the back plate and full warranties as if they were new. I'd like to proceed with the purchase. The existing equipment transferred to the water plant for a project currently underway in the upgrade of the chlorination system, where they need packs for evacuation, and the low pressure will be sufficient for them, and we'll continue to help them maintain those packs and service them.
Okay, so the recommendation is that staff be authorized to proceed with the single source acquisition of the refurbished demonstrator Draeger PS7000 self-contained breathing apparatus directly from Draeger Canada at a cost of $158,000, and further that it be funded from the future capital projects reserves with a repayment schedule of 10 years funded by future annual operating budgets. Councillor Minaj.
So this is an asset, and I just wanted to fully understand the life expectancy of the units, estimated life expectancy of the units, please.
There are some difference in the components. So a face mask is one component. It will have an expected life of 10 years. The bottles have a finite life of 15 years. Packs can be extended, and that's what we're suggesting with you. 14 years. Another good out of the packet, the backpack plate, if you will, itself. A little bit, sorry, I can't answer your question very directly, but anywhere from 10 to 15 years.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I might have my numbers wrong now. So 4,500 PSI, that's a 45-minute bottle versus a 22-minute bottle, right? So with firefighting operations, you're going in and then you want to turn around when you have half air. So if you want to think about it that way, that's the difference between having 20 minutes of interior time with 20 minutes of reserve, or having 10 minutes of interior time with only 10 minutes of reserve. Firefighter safety is going to definitely be increased. Having had an opportunity to use Draeger, it's probably the best equipment on the market. It's lighter, it's easier to move, it's more secure, it adjusts to different heights. I would say that this is a great purchase and a great opportunity to be able to get something that's refurbished. I can't imagine how fortunate we are to be able to find something like this.
Thank you. Councillor Dave Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this fully, and Phil, you always seem to come with savings when you show up before us, so please come more often. And I just can't see any here. How many are you getting for $158,000? Am I missing this somewhere?
I think the bottom paragraph To maintain our current level of service, we need 28 packs, so 14 per each station. It allows us 12 in service and then 2 for the firefighters to go away. We often travel out of town, so that'll allow 2 packs to go out of town. That's what we have now, and that we want to replace. I failed to mention in the staff report earlier, these packs we're actually very familiar with. We were lucky enough to host what was called Traeger Live Fire Training, one of 3 departments across Canada that hosted it 3 years back at the Peel Street shop. And we were able to use these packs, these actual packs, for 4 days, and we got a really good comfort level. I'd like to applaud and compliment the firefighters. These aren't the fanciest pack. There's a lot of features that have been stripped down from these, cost-effective today, but what we really think is beneficial is they'll be the most cost-effective to maintain over the next 10 to 15 years. They don't have all the electronic extras or gimmicks, if you will. They're just a basic pack.
Okay, no further questions, and all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next item on the agenda are communications petitions for Committee of the Whole action. There's 2. The first one being the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority Phragmites Common Reed, and perhaps, I'm sure we'll get a mover here or some disposition from the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move that we support the recommendation, obviously, and or the petition. I just very briefly speak to it. You'll see there is a letter from the authority, which actually was originally written by the Ontario Phragmites Working Group, and was just copied and passed by the authority board. But there are 4 items that are recommended in there to deal with Phragmites. And the most important one is, in my view, number 1, the expedited and streamlined approval of herbicides to enable control over water. And this is the central issue that we have right now. It seems like it's probably a smaller issue in Saugeen Shores than in some other areas, but it could become a bigger problem in Saugeen Shores if the lake levels remain high and Phragmites gets a chance to find its feet again in some of those wet areas of the municipality. So we do need, in my view, one of these herbicides that can control Phragmites over the water, and there are a couple of products that are currently in the pipeline with the federal government that are able to do that, but they are not approved yet, and we need to get them approved, and then we need to get them approved for use in Ontario. So I think a motion from this municipality and others in our watershed to support that process, both with the federal and provincial governments, would be useful. And I'd also ask, Mr. Mayor, if Council would consent to a delegation or a request for a delegation at the Ontario Good Roads Conference with the Ontario Minister of the Environment to make this point and suggest its urgency. I would be glad to participate in such a delegation and would ask for Council support both for this motion and for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder. Grace, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. The next item is support for a Board of Health. Grey Bruce Public Health Unit opposed to the new funding model. I can maybe fill you in on that. There was a task force set up with, there's 37 health units in the province, and they come up with a new funding model where 29 of those health units, mostly the smaller ones, Grey Bruce was one of them, that the funding model that we currently have essentially says that we are paid, overpaid for the programs that we get, and the larger urban centers, Peel Region, Toronto, Ottawa, Hamilton, Windsor, aren't. So the recommendation was that the health unit funding be redlined or froze until come to that magic number where we're meet the funding formula. And interestingly, the chair, the committee that I don't want to call into question the committee because I know they had all the expertise there, but they were dominated by the larger health units. So I would ask that we support it. I don't know where we'll go, but if we can have a mover by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So there's 7 pieces there, communications for petitions, Committee of the Whole information. If there's any specific questions on anyone, Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question through you to our treasurer, if I might, Susan. I'm just I'm looking at the Minister of Finance letter regarding the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, and it's to all the heads of council. We received a letter recently. I wonder what a question I have here. It's pertaining to. It says, beginning in 2016, the Rural Communities Grant, which continues to support rural farming communities, will be enhanced to $143 million. This funding increase will be targeted to municipalities with the highest levels of farmland in recognition of their unique challenges. Do you know, Susan, are we in that classification or not? And can someone explain to me what that, quickly, what the criteria is? Would you know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I am not aware that we're part of it, and I'm not aware of what the criteria would be, but I would certainly be willing to look into that.
Mike, if you look at, if you go to the Ministry website, in fact, the sheets are on my desk, they will explain that to you. We do not qualify for it, and it's because we don't have enough farmland in our total coverage. So we do not qualify for that.
Okay, well, I saw the paragraph, and I just wasn't sure.
If you want both last year's, and I can give them to you, they're on the desk.
I wouldn't mind reading it. The second question I had was in regards to our 2015 partnership funding. It says here in the 2016 minimum funding guarantees for municipalities in southern Ontario, which we are in, will be increased to at least 85% of their 2015 OMPF allocation. So I assume that that's a little piece of good news, because I believe we were at least 80%. Is that correct? So what does that mean financially for the municipality? Susan, could you help me with that?
That I can help you with, yes. We have been experiencing over the last few years a 20% decrease annually in our OMPF funding. What it means for 2016 is a 15% decrease, so not quite as bad as we were anticipating, be about an additional $69,000 from what we were originally anticipating with the 20% decrease.
I think it's worth. I'm glad you raised it, Mike. I think it's worth pointing out that our OMP funding is reduced this year by $202,000, which is equivalent to 2% on your taxes. So we've lost an additional $202,000 of funding from the province. Okay, if there's nothing else, then I'll take a motion to adjourn. Don and John, all in favor? Can we reconvene here at, take 5 minutes? Is that enough? 5 minutes? Okay, we'll start at 9:45.